about the QPR and process data analysis. So I call this section Making Your Program Data Work for You. And if you are watching the replay of this later and you have not already tuned into Nicole's section on qualitative data analysis, I really suggest looking at that because I'll refer back to it a number of times as we keep going here. So process data, we've talked about all these different little nuances of data today, right? Process data and the QPR. So data collection, as we've talked about, is the process of gathering and measuring information or variables of interest in an established systematic fashion that enables one to answer stated research questions, test hypotheses, and evaluate outcomes. Since we're talking about evaluation, that really rang true for what we're doing here. So one of the things I found about process data specifically is it is generally made up of time series data. And as it happens, the QPR, your quarterly progress report that you already put together and submit on a quarterly basis, it as a snapshot of your project and the work done in each 3-month period. So basically, combined over time, those QPRs are your process data, right? Each one is systematically collecting the same data from one quarter to the next on your program. Ta-da, we're giving you this process data. So what I want to talk about here is that looking forward to my next slide. Okay, that the data that you've already collected and you're submitting doesn't have to be just a check mark. We did it. We're responsible for doing this. We got it done. It is really usable data. So here we go. Let's use this data. So this is looking specifically at the capacity building section of your QPR. And I know that a lot of grantees do download the QPR at the end or use a template and pre-fill it all and then copy it into the QPR tool. Or you may, if you don't have your past QPRs, you're welcome to email me and I'm happy to send you the PDF download of what you submitted so that you can have access to all of this. So we're going to look at capacity building. We're going to start with these scores that we do, right? This is just a generalized, everyone is working on the same P1 through P7. P7 is I will do all my reporting, so we're not actually going to look at that one. P1 through P6 of your primary activities, and then everyone will have different benchmarks that they're working on. So regardless of what you have for your benchmarks, let's look specifically at these previous activity scores and current activity scores. And what I'm going to do is pull those out. So in this case, this was this past quarter, looking at FY25 Q1 and Q2, but we reported capacity building for the same benchmarks last year, starting in Q3. So we're actually going to take the data from FY24 Q3 and Q4 plus FY25 Q1 and Q2 and combine all this data to look at how we're doing, what's going on. So what I did here is really just put them into a little table and, you put them in a little table and ta-da, Excel can make you a fancy little progress chart, essentially. So in P1 here, we've measured, it was recorded as being a 7, which is ongoing work. So I just labeled that one on the chart as ongoing work. There's no movement in it. I don't expect there to be movement. It's something that we're going to just continue to do quarter over quarter. But for P2 through P6, we started at 0 for most of them, or here on P4, we started a little higher. And what you can see is that over time, we're making improvements in the score that we've given ourselves. We're heading towards some kind of goal. So the 6 where I marked benchmark achieved, 6 is where we've hit that we've completed that activity that we've done it. So in the case of P4, the entire activity is completed. And whether then at that point it becomes ongoing work or it was completed for that year or whatever it is, what our picture shows is that we have done this work. And we can see really, as we say down here at the bottom, that quarter over quarter, we have increased our institutional capacity for tobacco prevention work through these 6 major activities. So all the work that we're doing here is moving the needle along in terms of developing our tobacco prevention work portfolio. So the next little section that I have here is you could also do the same thing Nicole just described by looking at your activities. So you could take all of your activities for each of your quarters and draw that out and do the entire qualitative analysis process through that to see what kinds of activities you did, what things were accomplished. You might find that there are specific things that you got a lot done. You can pull in your reach numbers to this too to see how many people you were impacting along the way. And then one of the other sections Nicole spoke about was doing the analysis on the challenges and facilitators. So same thing, for each quarter, you have a list of challenges and facilitators. And maybe some quarters you have no challenges, found no facilitators, and that's totally fine. But what you can do is draw these out. And based on what I know about all the different programs, specifically on the LHA side, your program summary also might be what you want to play into this. So if you took your challenges, facilitators, and the project summary for each one, you can then do the analysis, go through, find those themes, find the pieces of things you didn't know were even happening. And as Nicole said, the challenges and facilitators really become these lessons learned. Like we found that the program was most readily received when we had, and here's the facilitator themes that we found of things that helped us move our program forward. Along the same lines, the challenges that we encountered that we had not anticipated included XYZ, looking at those challenges themes that you have experienced. And then as we prepare to implement a similar program in whatever area you're going to move to next to do that, whatever the next level of the programming is, we'll be sure to, and then things that we want to be able, maybe it's things that we want to be able to replicate because we noticed that every time that we had a really on board engaged champion, we had much better outcomes, every time that we struggled to get in front of the city council, we really struggled to be able to make inroads in the area that we were interested in working in. So that's like a real quick brief version of it. And what I want to say is that the exact same process can be done for all the strategy work. And so in the strategy work, we started that the reporting on that in Q1 of this year, I believe, reporting how we're reporting. So it might be a little while before you really have stuff that you can show this kind of movement and this kind of progress. But also that is the really gritty, intense work that you're doing in your communities to really affect change. So that'll be really a good place to put all this into action. So in terms of this process reporting, we have the numbers or the quantitative side to give you the picture to show over here on the left. We are making progress, and sometimes you'll have one that it stalls out and you have the same number across the board, or you dip backwards a little bit. And that's where you really want to be able to dig into those challenges that you experienced and talk about that too. And then the context, this qualitative analysis really gives you the story to be able to tell. So again, this little snippet that I came up for in terms of reporting is quarter over quarter, we have increased our institutional capacity for tobacco prevention work through 6 major activities that you could then go into about the different things that you're doing for capacity building. We reached the number of people in the community, members, employees, different things for each of the different activities that you're doing. Maybe it's in media, we were able to have this kind of impact in the community and in gaining institutional tobacco knowledge, you're trained X number of employees. We were able to find success through these different kinds of collaborations. Here are our lessons that we learned. And as we do the next set of work, we plan to do these things as well. So that's kind of how you can bring all the pieces together and lay it out to show the invaluable work that you're doing. So back to leveraging the QPR data, it's more than just checking a reporting requirement. We really want you to see that and my example was on the LHA side, but the competitive and TA media grantees, that side of reporting all has similar scoring and pieces to it that can absolutely support all of this as well. So, and then the idea here is that you can use the data you already routinely collect and report. You are required to collect and report this data, but ta-da, now you have this data that you can use in order to demonstrate the valuable work that you are doing in your communities. Again, it really gives you a chance to tell the story of the different pieces all coming together. And it allows you hopefully to tell the story of the long game. We didn't mention, but also all of your all those benchmarks that you're using. The benchmarks are there because if you can be doing X, Y, and Z to get to those benchmarks, that benchmark is the first piece of knowing the long-term evidence-based outcome is, lowering the smoking rate or increasing the number of people who use cessation treatments and stuff like that. So tell the story of the long game, how the pieces, the small changes that you're making, the small pieces, the small growth that you have been able to achieve is setting up your community for the long-term outcomes that are predicted from the work you've done. And then I have a couple more little things to say. Okay. So, and then thinking about your previous efforts in the context of the current grant cycle, do you have additional information about key populations and other resources you can, and community perceived problems? You can always add those in. This can also be where you start your qualitative analysis, where you are going to start from. In the previous grant cycle or year, did you get the results you intended? Again, with the lessons learned, what pieces affected that outcome positively or negatively? What are you going to change going forward? What questions might you have asked that could have improved the effectiveness of your activities? What do you know now that you didn't know before? Qualify that as a lessons learned again, right? What do you wish you had asked 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago as you were setting up the program that you should be putting into what changes can we make now? And then what key lessons did you learn to explore through the primary data collection? Going back to your large scale population data, what do you still want to know there, and how can that help inform these other pieces as well? So the next question is, where will you start with all of this data? What are you going to do? And where are you going to let it take you? And here are a couple places to start if you're getting stuck with any of the different pieces. As we mentioned, all of these slides and the different sections of the presentation will be posted on the CPEG site and shared out so that that's available for all of you. And from there, do we have any questions?